Soft White Underbelly is about truth-telling. It's about creating a space for stories on society's most marginalized that venture beyond our own biases, which is why Ground News is the perfect sponsor for my channel. In a world where sensational headlines flood our feeds, some of the most important stories get overshadowed. Ground News highlights local news from around the world, which gives an on-the-ground perspective that might be missing from national coverage. The app and website empowers you to form your own opinions by serving you every article published on any news story worldwide, plus data about its credibility and where it may fall on the political spectrum. I particularly like their blind spot feed, dedicated to showing news stories that are underrepresented in the mainstream media. Their election coverage was a great example of that. It's easy to forget how much bias can shape the reality we live in. And in a world where our attention is constantly being fought over, my Vantage plan easily helps me keep up with the more important stories slipping through the cracks. So I encourage you to check them out at ground.news/SWU. Right now they're offering 50% off their Vantage plan as a limited time offer. Their platform is also subscriber funded, meaning that when you subscribe through my link or even gift it to someone you know, you're helping to hold the media accountable and you're helping my channel. Thank you very much. All right, Mia.
Yes.
Mia, where are you from originally? Where did you grow up?
From San Bernardino, California.
Mm-hmm. And that's where you live still?
Yes.
And you are a sex therapist?
I am.
Specializing in
kinks, fetishes, and alternative relationships.
Well, this will be a fun conversation.
I think so.
Should we just dive in? Tell me how this community, the fetish kink community, is different than, what do they call it, vanilla?
I think that there's multiple communities, right, within kinks and fetishes. I think that as an umbrella, it's very open-minded. And I think that as you kind of dive into this type of lifestyle, you find different communities within the communities. So we have kind of open relationships, swingers, ethically non-monogamous people. We have people in BDSM. We have people who are in kink and fetishes specifically. And I find that a lot of people in this lifestyle are very open-minded, have a unique view of the world and understanding of relationships and people. And I've found some of the best connections I've ever made in my life within the community.
The interviews I've done with the fetish kink crowd have been the most educated, self-aware, articulate group of people you could ever imagine. Every single one has been, oh my God, that was great. It's almost like a treasure trove of great communicators.
Yeah, you've had some really good conversationalists, people who have really done things within the community to kind of help build it in a positive way. So I really enjoyed watching your videos. Yeah,
it's funny to read the comments on some of the more extreme.
I didn't read them.
Yeah, it's if you read them, sometimes they're just people tend to be very set in their ways, and they don't like seeing somebody having more fun than they are. I think that's what I think it is. Where does an interest in these kinks and fetishes come from? Because everyone assumes, oh, you were traumatized as a kid. But then I've interviewed so many people that said they never had anything like that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I did hear an interview that you did, and someone said 99% of the population that's into this kind of stuff has suffered trauma. And that was a huge generalization.
People like to just pick 99% of it, whatever.
Yeah.
And they make up their facts.
I think that in today's standards, a lot of things can be considered trauma because now we know of physical, emotional, sexual. There's so many types of things that are traumatizing to us. And yes, there is people within the community that have suffered trauma, and it has influenced their preferences, both in life and sexually and in relationships. But that's not the case for everybody. One of the things that I read when I became in my studies and as I became involved in the lifestyle was something called the kink identity theory. And what that theory is that we have an interest or a desire or a fascination with something as children, and then as we become adolescents, it becomes paired with something sexual. Something happens where the two kind of become one, and then as we become adults, it's part of our sexual identity. I hear stories of people. One of the interviewers you interviewed said, "Oh, I remember reading a story where I saw a red bottom in a nursery rhyme and I was just drawn to it." It wasn't anything traumatic. It was just something that was alluring and just kind of brought some kind of emotion and sensation. I think that with anything in our life, we have our life, and there's going to be different things that happen throughout our lives that are just going to change our personalities, change our perspectives and views. And kinks and fetishes are exactly the same. Something happens, and we have this fascination and this appeal to it, and it kind of stays with us throughout our sexual identity.
The majority of the FetLife crowd that you find on the website FetLife, they seem to be polyamorous.
Yes.
Almost without exception.
Yeah, that's a very big community.
So, is that? Do you think that's just the way humans are meant to relate?
I think polyamory is a very specific term. I know that I would consider there's the best label I would give to it would be ethically non-monogamous, where it's like a lot of people are choosing to have multiple partners, not necessarily sexual partners though. And I think that was something that came up in a lot of your interviews, especially with people in Dom sub dynamics. I find that sex is kind of like a buffet, right? There's so many different things on the table. There's so many different types of kinks, interests, appeals, things that bring arousal to us. And you come to the buffet and you see, this is for me, this is for me, this is not for me, this is for me. And then you kind of make your play of what's unique to you. I find that it's very hard, especially for people who are very kinky, to find someone that you can relate to on all aspects. I think that it's hard to date in a vanilla type of traditional relationship where you have to share commonalities and views, upbringings, things that you value. But when it comes to kink and sex, it's a little more defined. Like, how are you going to find someone that wants to dress you like an infant and do things exactly the way that you want? And it's very hard to find the right fit. And I think that that's why people choose to have multiple partners. Sometimes it's play partners, sometimes they are relationships, sometimes they're dynamics. And I find that I kind of fall into that threshold myself. I am married, and my husband is, I don't want to say vanilla, but definitely he doesn't share the same interests that I have. I know that he in particular is not interested in BDSM. He's not interested in being on the floor on his knees and behaving in that way. But he understands the appeal for me to find that and find that fulfillment elsewhere. And it works for us. I'm fortunate that I've been able to evolve in my relationship with my partner. And I find that a lot of times people aren't as fortunate. A lot of times people are in relationships and they're in marriages and they want to do these type of things with their partner, with their loved one. And a lot of times it's the partner is unwilling to, or maybe they're willing, but they just don't have the appeal for it. And that can be hard in a relationship.
Feel uncomfortable,
yeah,
little too extreme or something.
Yeah. I find that a lot of people that seek out professionals or somebody to kind of live out this fantasy is because their partner is unwilling. Most people want to do it with their partner and someone they love. So that's kind of what I've seen in my job.
And there are so many different subgroups inside the fetish community.
Yeah.
And first off, what's the difference between kink and fetish? Is there a difference?
So fetish and fetishist are people who have a particular interest that is gratifying to them sexually. So, for example, a foot fetishist sees a pair of feet and they find it sexy, it's arousing. I've even heard people saying, "Oh, I love feet more than I love boobs." It's something that is very, very sexually appealing to them. A kink is something that not only is sexually gratifying, but also something in our personality that just instinctively gives us gratification, like smelling something or touching something. a kink is more in our DNA, which I described in the kink identity theory. It's something that has been part of us since childhood and has kind of progressed with us in our sexual identity and personality. Fetishists are people that just appeal to a certain type of fetish. Kinksters, or people within kink, is something that it's more part of their personality. So.
And do you find, like, I think a lot of people from the vanilla contingent are very conservative. You know, you could even describe them as uptight sometimes.
Could be.
And the fetish kink crowd is just so free and open. Do you find the kink community to be healthier in relating to others?
It can be. I think that it can go both ways, right?
I'm sure there's bad
I
examples.
think that a lot of times people come into this lifestyle and you think, oh, you watch pornography and you read things on the internet, or you see something that appeals to you and you want to kind of explore. A big thing was when 50 Shades of Grey came out, everybody all of a sudden wants themselves a Christian Bale, or what was his name? Something like that. The guy, the star of the movie.
Yeah, I forget.
Something
Christian
appeals to people and they want to come and kind of try it out, see what it's about. And I think with it, like anything, you come in and you're very lust-filled, you're very excited, you want to jump into it. And sometimes people jump into it in the wrong way with the wrong type of people. And it can become something that's not what it should be. And then there's people like myself and others in the community who are really trying to educate, who are trying to send a positive message and teach what it should be like, what is ethically appropriate, what is safety, right? I think someone mentioned that one of the biggest things that we teach is BDSM 101, and teaching how do you vet somebody, what kind of questions do you ask, what are you going to allow people to do and what are they not.
You've been doing this for how many years?
I will say that I have been kinky since I was legal.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Do you think that the fetish community has evolved in the last 20, 30 years?
I haven't been involved in the community for that long due to my age, but I think that the world in general, right, has changed a lot. I think that when I first started kind of entering into this lifestyle, it was very like seedy. You're on Craigslist,
it has that reputation.
Chat rooms or things like that. Why? Because this is so unique and so kind of behind closed doors that people kind of congregate in certain ways. And there was a lot of things that were unsafe about the way that we were reaching out to people and communicating with others. The technology and all the things that have changed in the internet has really affected the way we communicate with others. So I, like a lot of us perverts online, began Craigslist and different chat rooms, meeting people. As I've discovered different websites, I've tried different things out. I really love FetLife in particular because it's almost like a kinky Facebook.
Yeah, that's
there's
exactly
people,
what it is.
Yeah. There's people on there. You can make connections. You find people with unique interests. And there's people within the community now that are teaching classes, that there's authors. It's amazing because there's so many of us that are educated in the community that are really trying to put a different face as to what this is. I think that we hear things on the internet of different people that have one of the things that always comes up, it's kind of like the R. Kelly thing, or all these celebrities that are coming out where they're urinating on people or having them sit in a corner. And I think, wow, this is what people think that people in BDSM do. And yes, it does happen, but what's the difference? It's that this person is doing it without consent and forcing people. And in the community, we do it in a completely different way. It's something that's discussed. It's something that's trained. It's something that you build together and you fantasize about. And it has to be done with someone who is consenting to do these things with you. Now, with the way the society has gone on, from being on seedy websites to now finding more community-based programs, it's really changed a lot. You can go on FetLife and look for events on anything that you're interested in, electric play, rope, etiquette, high protocol, I mean, really anything you can imagine. There's someone out there teaching it and trying to kind of educate the masses.
Would you say men, like the community has more men in it than women, or is it pretty equal?
That's a good question because I feel like it's a lot of men because I'm being approached by men. But when you go to event, it just depends on what community and what event you're approaching. I go to a lot of femdom events where it's female-led environments and it's submissive men. When there's something that is kind of just a BDSM event, maybe 50-50. It's kind of hard to tell the numbers. I think it just depends on which community you're a part of.
I always find it interesting when I'm interviewing a submissive and their dom, that both sides will agree that the submissive has the power in the relationship, which of course you wouldn't ever expect. But I've heard it over and over again. Because without that submissive, the dom has nothing to work with.
Yeah, it's, we also use the Triskelion, the yin and the yang. You can't have one without the other. We can't have a dom without a sub. We can't have a bottom without a top. We're both. It needs to be a meaningful relationship that's equally beneficial. I think that people assume that being the dominant, you're just overpowering the person and mistreating them, or forcing them to do things that are not what they want. But I find that it's very beneficial both ways. I think that for someone like me who takes control of somebody and nurtures them and helps them get to where they need to be, there's so many things that I provide to my partners in terms of guidance, love, kindness, reassurance, structure, discipline, and vice versa. There's so many things they provide for me in my life, which it's not necessarily monetary. I think that people assume that, people in the lifestyle are just, especially women, dominatrix or doms or tops, are out for the money. But I'm not fueled by money. I'm fueled by the connection that we're sharing, by the dynamic that we're sharing, by their devotion to me and their caring for me. And yes, I find that people in my life make themselves invaluable, and they hold a lot of power.
Is there room for love in these kind of relationships?
I believe so. A thing that comes up a lot in the community is, are you professional or lifestyle? And professional people do it. They have their sessions and it's an exchange of goods and services, right? For me personally, I choose lifestyle because I want to be in something meaningful with my partner. Even if it's not something that's sexual, it's still meaningful and intimate. And there is a lot of love and care that comes into that. I think that the relationship, the play, everything about what we do wouldn't be meaningful if I didn't care for them and they didn't care for me.
Do you find once a person is into this kind of stuff that they explore and delve deeper into whatever their, for lack of a better word, I'll call it darkness is? Or is it once they find their happy resting place and the things that they're into, is that like it, and they just stay right there?
It depends on the person.
Yeah, some people like to push the envelope.
Yeah, some people even on their tag on FetLife will say evolving, and I would always say evolving as well. I think that I knew I came into it having particular interests and things that I wanted to experience, and as I experienced them, I realized, wow, I want to explore more. Things pique my interest and things pique my curiosity and creativity, and it kind of continues to grow. Some people, they try what they want to try and they're like, this is not for me. I just want to stay here. I in particular only do things that I enjoy. I only own equipment and see people that I enjoy to see. I have the luxury of picking and choosing them that way. But I think that's more of an individual thing. But yeah, it's definitely constant evolution in this lifestyle.
And it seems like the community is very just accepting, non-judgmental, just kind of like, if you want to try it, come on out, we'll make it easy for you. And if you don't, that's fine too. Yeah. Whereas the vanilla crowd is so judgmental and just, they've got, oh, this is sick, this is twisted, this is like, they have all these crazy attitudes about it.
Yeah.
I find that very interesting.
Yeah, you do run into that, and I think people kind of have misconceptions of what it's like to be in an alternative type of lifestyle, alternative type of relationships. I do think that there is a lot of closed-mindedness about it. I think that that's why it's been, people have in the past were doing things that were unsafe just to kind of get this need met and fulfill these desires. And I know now there's better ways to go about things and better ways to be safe. And again, I think that a lot of the education was just very closed off for a long time. And I love that you're doing this and kind of sharing different types of perspective in a positive way as to what it is to be kinky and open in a sexual type of way. I think that we need people who are educated, who are good people, who are sharing positive information out here in the community.
If somebody is living a fairly vanilla life, romantically or in the bedroom, I guess you would say, what would you suggest if they wanted to test the waters a little bit?
So I do work with couples. So as a sex therapist, I kind of deal with the wide scope of clientele. I deal with victims of trauma and sexual abuse, people who have struggles with intimacy based off things that have happened in their past. I deal with individuals who have these desires, fetishes, fantasies, whatever you would call it, and are either thinking of exploring it or thinking of bringing it up to their partners. And I kind of help them navigate towards that, whether individually or as a couple. I also work with couples who, there's some people that still save their virginity for marriage. There's people that have only had one sexual partner and want to explore, want to learn. There's people who have never even seen pornography and they're like, oh, so they want to understand things, they want to explore. I always say things should be based off your particular interest and what you're interested in. If, for example, you love to dress up for Halloween, you like to embody a character, role play. You love massages and something, you like to be touched, something sensual, candles, temperature play, different types of interests, pinwheels, things that are more to your personality and your interest. And also, you and your partner need to go and experience things at your level and things that you're comfortable with. But yeah, I work with people who have those interests, and I also have like a questionnaire that I found from another kinkster that I really enjoyed, where it kind of talks about all these different kinks and things that you can try in the bedroom. And how do you feel about that? Are you curious? Is it a no? Is it a maybe? So that's kind of fun too. That's another way I like to start when I have some clientele who kind of want to experience something, but they don't know what. So.
As a sex therapist, so it sounds like you're seeing all kinds of people, not just fetish, kinkster, and all that. Yeah. Also people who have a much more inexperienced experience with sex. Do you? How is that common?
Yeah.
Really?
Again, I think that a lot of people, because of the way that society views these unique interests, people kind of try to hide things from themselves, from their partners. And eventually there comes a time where it's like, I need to do this. I can't hide it anymore. I feel like I'm not fulfilled. I feel like this is something I want to explore. And we see that a lot of people, even someone mentioned in one of your interviews that sometimes their spouses know exactly what's happening. They know that they're seeking out somebody else. Why? Because they want this fantasy to come to life or this experience to come to life. And it's something that they just can't hold back anymore, that the time has come. I find that, a lot of people that I see are first timers.
Is it possible to be in a monogamous relationship long term and then introduce the idea of bringing other people into it?
So now you're talking about open relationships.
Yeah.
That depends on your partner, right? Because
I would say 100%. Unless you're going to cheat.
I would say that because in my community and the people that I deal with, that I work with, open relationships are very widespread. I forget that the majority of the world is monogamous. Most people choose to be in monogamous relationships with a loved one where they're only with each other. I have to remember that that is the greater population, not what I'm exposed to on a regular basis. I would just say that if you entered a relationship to be monogamous and your partner is choosing to be monogamous, I don't know what you would do, right? I personally knew that I could not live that type of lifestyle.
You couldn't do monogamous.
Yeah, I just never saw myself being in a relationship with one person for the rest of my life. Now, thankfully, I found, somebody that I can see myself being with for the rest of my life. But I think that the scope of everything that I'm interested in and all the things that I want to do in my life, it's really hard to just find one person that can fulfill all those needs.
Are some of the kinks bordering on things that are just a little too extreme?
I think extreme is a word that's based off an individual. But I would say, yeah, some of the interests that I have, people would consider to be extreme.
And is that stemming from some kind of childhood experience?
It's interesting because I think about all the things that I'm interested in now and why am I this way. I like to reflect a lot. I like to read and study and discuss with professionals that I know. And I noticed that, yeah, there's different things that have happened in my life that have definitely fueled my personality. I grew up with a lot of strong women in my life who are very successful and kind of independent in a way. So I knew that I was also raised by my father to be very independent. He had me, he was outside building a fence. I was out there building it with him. So he never raised me like, you're a girl and you need to stick to these standards and do these things. I also realized that my personality, I've always been very aggressive, very dominant, very particular, and kind of, I try to think about the way that my personality is, and I just feel like when I discovered the community, it just made sense. Like, oh, this is what I am. I'm a dom, and this is why I'm interested in these things. And the particular fetishes that I'm interested in, yeah, I think that there is some kind of things that happened in my childhood that did kind of influence that. I enjoy foot fetish. That's one of my biggest fetishes, actually.
Being the recipient of it?
Yes, yes. But also I admire beautiful feet. I see somebody, oh, wow, head to toe beauty. And I try to be that myself, too. I think that when people are admiring someone, they want to see that, that head to toe they've been taken care of and they've taken the time to look a certain way. When I was younger, I was kind of made fun of for the way that my feet look. And now it's funny because people seek me out for the way that my feet look. What other fetishes do I have? Obviously, femdom. I'm a female dominant. There's different types of subcategories like we were discussing within the community. And I enjoy being a top in always. So I'm interested in pet play, so pony play, pup play, any type of pets. I'm usually the top. Well, I am the top in every type of community. So people want to be the pets. They want to be the ones interacting, and I'm the handler, their owner. People want to be submissives and be dominated and controlled, and I'm also the top in that way. In terms of the foot fetish, I'm also the top. And then I also do, I've done boxing since I was in first grade. So I also do professional boxing and wrestling matches where I'm also the dominant one in the fight.
I find it so interesting where you'll see a woman or a man, like maybe two brothers in a relationship, and one is a submissive and he likes to play that submissive role, and the other is a dominant through and through.
Yeah.
And it's just a roll of the dice, it seems.
Yeah, I think that there's going to be different personalities in life, like we know. You and I can be in the room and hear the exact same speech, word for word. We listen to the exact same presenter. Everything was the same. But you might listen to it and in your mind grasp it and process it and understand it in one way. And I might take the conversation and the speech and analyze it and understand it in my own way. You can be brought up exactly the same experiences and still be completely different. Why is that? I think it's the way that we think, the way that we're processing what we're thinking. And I think a lot of it is our personalities. One person might be a pessimist and one might be optimistic, and it's just kind of the way that we process and analyze and think about what we just heard and what we've experienced. For example, I know that there's so many people that are into feet, right? Foot fetish is one of the most common fetishes out there. And everyone's story as to why they're into feet is totally different.
I've heard that a foot fetish is actually, there's some part of your brain that is placed a little differently, and where most men are probably turned on by breasts or other female body parts, the guys with foot fetishes are turned on by feet.
Yeah,
and it's just something that's positioned differently in the brain.
Yeah, I hear that it's close to the pleasure region of the mind, and that's why the wires can get crossed. And it's I hear that often too. I don't know the science on that. I haven't really dove into that in particular. Yeah, but I do hear that a lot. I know it's very, very common. And I prefer people that are into feet. I find that the personality type is just so different than some of the other fetishes that I experience. I find that they're very caring, very nurturing. They have it's something about, this is something that I was realizing when I was preparing for this interview. I've noticed that a lot of people that are into fetishes, and in particular in the kink and fetish community, are neurodivergent. What that means is that a lot of people in the community have some kind of diagnosis. Neurodivergent is kind of an umbrella term that we use to describe people with autism, ADHD, obsessive compulsive disorders, different types of mental conditions. And I find that a lot of people that are into these type of things are very sensory seeking, in particular tactile sensory. They crave, touch, sounds. They either want sounds or they don't want sounds. They hide from them. They need constant stimulation. And then you find that a lot of people, certain jobs come into the lifestyle a lot too, like people who live very intense type of lifestyles. Police officers, people in the military, people in the medical field. So it's really interesting how certain personality types and different types of things are within the community are very prevalent. So.
Such an interesting world.
Yeah.
Mia, what would you say is the most important lesson you've learned in your years doing this?
I think that a lot of us we suppress a lot of what we want to do with our life, whatever that is. We have dreams, we have aspirations, we have fantasies and things that we want to do. And I think that because we're thinking about what others may think or may say or may do, we really hold back from what we want to do. I find that people within the community are very happy because they're carefree. They don't care what others think. They're doing what they want to do, the way they want to do it, with who they want to do it. And I find that that's led to a lot of happiness, a lot of acceptance of yourself, but also of the world. I think that it gives you just a different understanding of people and the way we interact with each other and the world. So.
All right. Mia, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thanks.
Very interesting world you work in.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Even though Soft White Underbelly consists of a lot of videos, it's really still a photography project to me. And if you appreciate the photography, sometimes it's difficult to enjoy it when it's scrolling down the screen, which is the only option I had in this horizontal format on YouTube. So last year we came out with the first Soft White Underbelly book, which is a collection of the best portraits from the thousands of interviews I've done. Each portrait in this book is accompanied by an interesting quote from the person's interview.
Oh my God.
There's more.
Wow. These aren't as bad as I thought. I look like a witch.
The book includes multi-page spreads of both Rebecca and the Whitaker family. I will not be reprinting this book when it sells out, so once it's gone for good. You can order yours at softwhiteunderbelly.org. $125, $150 for a signed copy. And thank you for watching.